Welcome, everyone. My name is Claudia. I'm one of the alumni at the University of Leicester, and I'm going to be your host for tonight's event. Just waiting a few more minutes as a couple more people joining, and then we'll get started. Thank you so much for attending our Festival of Change. I'm very thrilled to share and, oh, hold on, sorry about that. I'm very happy to see so many of you. So thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone. Our speaker for today's event is Dr. Gez Williams, an alumni of the university with a PhD in cardiovascular science. Jez's presentation will focus on her journey to becoming a postdoctoral research associate, the challenge she has faced along the way, and the area of research she's currently focusing on. Before I invite Jez to talk, please feel free to keep your videos on. I can see some of you already for the duration of the event. However, I would ask you to please keep your microphones on mute so that we can all hear Jez clearly. As a reminder, you can find the microphone and the camera button either at the top of your screen or at the bottom if you're using an iPad or a phone. So please don't worry if you're struggling to mute yourself or anything like that. A member of the alumni team will be able to support you with this and turn it off on your behalf. We'd love for you to post your questions for the Q&A in the chat box, and we will answer them as many as we can towards the end of the session. And as a reminder as well, to please be respectful in the comments and the questions as well. But finally, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Dr. Gez Williams for her presentation on a journey to becoming a postdoctoral research associate. So over to you now, Jez.
Right, thank you. Thank you to everyone for coming today, and thank you to Claudia and Victoria for inviting me to speak today. I'm just going to talk a little bit first about the journey it has taken me through to get into university and to where I am now. So that's why I've called it the pilgrimage, and as you'll see, you'll learn why. And then I'm going to talk about what I did for my PhD broadly, and then my postdoc position, and as well as where I'd like to go in the future. So how it all started. I'm just going to move this screen down so I don't see you guys. So I am from the care system. So it was called Looked After Children now. So from the age of 14 years old, my sisters and I were placed into the care of the state. Now, we wasn't put into foster care or into adoption. We were put into women's refuges. So as 3 children moved separately into separate places at 14 years old on our own. Now, throughout my childhood, I went to 5 different secondary schools, moved around from London to Leicester, and I can say it was pretty hard at 14 years old, taking myself from my hostel 2 buses to get to school every day, come home, cook dinner. I sound like an adult. Cook dinner, do all the cleaning and all the cooking and washing and iron, just as you do as an adult, as well as having to pay my rent on a Friday. So this was on top of trying to do my GCSEs, but somehow I managed to do that. The data for looking after children, this is just from the past 30 years. So from when I was actually little to for the last 30 years, there has been a big rise in children in the care system, which is really disheartening for someone like myself, because you'd think there'd be more provisions in place for people like myself. Although there is a bigger population in the country since 1997, but you would still think at 2025 there would be a lot more provisions put in place for us, but unfortunately not. So I want to help try and do something about this once I know how to, either doing by charities. I give lots of talks to children, to schools, for people in disadvantaged backgrounds, just to share my story and to help them have a more positive outlook, because being a child with no parents and no family, or just with teachers moving from schools, you think the world is over, and it's really, really not. There are a lot of people out there that can help and will help you, as you'll see. So I entered the non-traditional route through education. So as I said before, I moved secondary schools 5 times. It says 4 schools because I went back to one of them. So it was Beaumont Leys in Leicester, and then a couple more in Leicester. We moved to London when I was 12, and then I came back to Leicester when I was 14, and this is when I ended up in care. I managed to leave school with 8 GCSEs, A's to C's. I don't know how I did it, but I managed to. I did like school. I was classed as a bit of a nerd. Um, and luckily enough, although I had a traumatic upbringing, it kind of didn't really bother me too much. You kind of like hide it. You just go through life as a high functioning teenager, if you like. There, I went on to college to study graphic design, actually, but I didn't like it. So I left and went to study fashion. Absolutely loved it. But because I turned 18 on the second year, I got kicked out. Unfortunately, the system doesn't pay, or there was no provisions in place for people like myself. So as soon as you legally turn 18 back then, the grants and everything had stopped for you. You become an adult, and then you have to go on what's called the job seekers allowance. And so I couldn't afford college, so I had to leave. At this time, I did a little bit of traveling, and I had my daughter. And so I decided, right, I need to sort my life out. Life can't go on like this. And I went back to college for the third time. They say third time is lucky, three's lucky. And there I went back and resat my maths because I actually got ungraded in maths. That was the only one I failed. And so I resat my maths, and then I went to do the Access to Science course. Here is where I got most of my distinctions from, and I got into De Montfort University. I did actually apply for Leicester, but I was 3 distinctions short. So I went to De Montfort University to study biomedical science. But here again, I always think like some things happen for a reason. The fourth year students, or the third year students at Leicester University doing their biological science course, had to come to do biomed on their fourth year at De Montfort University, because ours is an accredited course and you are able to get your HCP registration to work in the hospital, whereas the University of Leicester is not an accredited course. So actually it worked out to be a bonus. But then I went on to do my PhD at the University of Leicester. So I got there in the end. Now, I've put this slide here because of all the trauma and traumatic events that I've been through as a child, it actually ended up me having physical trauma. So I ended up in 2015 being sent to the neurologist for a suspected stroke. They said that it was just functional neurological disorder and not to get stressed, which was difficult in my final year at university with a 4-year-old child and working 2 jobs. But I just carried on, as you do, you power through. Then not once, but in 2023, I went back to the neurologist because I had stroke-like symptoms, but instead of just the left side of the body, it was on both sides, so the left and right. Then they found that I had lesions on my spine as well as my brain. So they thought maybe it's multiple sclerosis. I'm still under investigations, and I was diagnosed with neuroinflammatory disorders as well as some autoimmune disorders. So this put kind of pressure on me trying to submit for my PhD, and I had to extend for a year, which it was a hard decision to take, but I'm glad that I took it to try and heal. But I did manage to graduate. So yes, last year I finally graduated with a PhD in cardiovascular sciences. And then I also, within the same year, got my first author publication, which was really difficult to write, especially with a brain injury, but I managed to do it. And it was definitely something that I will never be able to forget of, how far I've come and where I've come from as well. So during my first year at De Montfort University, I actually won Leicester Mercury Student of the Year, beating the odds, and overall student. This is an award that the Leicester Mercury give to students who have come from either an injury or like a traumatic event. There were some people that were entered that had come in through a car crash and still managed to go through their education. And it's just to recognise that the trials and tribulations of some students that they go through. I also won a Vice Chancellor's Award as well for Distinguished Student. And I also won a couple of little awards at the college as well. And I was on their prospectus for the 2015-16 prospectus at the Leicester College. So that was funny, especially being on the bus stop. Yeah, not good. But yeah, it was really good. So finally, like I said, I finally made it into the University of Leicester, where I did my PhD. And because I wanted to do clinical PhD, this was definitely the place to be. I loved De Montfort University, but De Montfort University is gold for their teaching, and rightly so. They were absolutely amazing, and they gave really good pastoral care as well and additional support. But the University of Leicester is actually gold for their research. So this is where I wanted to be. And because I am clinical, I am across 3 of the main big hospitals and on the main campus. So it's brilliant to get to work with patients and staff too. So the PhD project. So my PhD project was on sudden cardiac death. And what we wanted to do was stratify patients at risk of sudden cardiac death. What that means is, are people that have already had a heart attack or have some kind of heart failure or disease, are they subjected to go into sudden cardiac arrest at any time? And will they need a defibrillator fitted? So first of all, there's a difference between a cardiac arrest and a heart attack. A heart attack, you probably know, you get a blockage in the valves. So it's the blood circulation that's cut off. And this can cause intense pain for a man on the left-hand side, sweaty, clammy kind of symptoms as well, and headaches. But for a woman, it's actually different. So we'll talk about the different signs and symptoms later for other medications and disorders. But I want to say that for a woman, we can have abdominal pain, which is like period pain, lower back pain, pain in your arms and your hands, and headaches and feeling sick. So in my new research, I will be making sure that some advertising to let people know the differences between men and women when it comes to heart attacks. So with the cardiac arrest, this is where the electrical impulses are interrupted or stopped. So your heart's beeping, boom, 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 up to 60 to 90 beats per minute. And then it just cuts out. And what happens, you will just fall to the floor and you literally have minutes to save that life. So you have minutes to do CPR and get a defibrillator on that person to give them a shock to bring them back. So I want to look at the risks of these people and to see who's at risk and what we can do for them. So most of the people that have had a heart attack before, they will generally have a stent in their heart, which will just open up the valves, or they'll be implanted with an intracardiac defibrillator, or sometimes a pacemaker. They are slightly different, but kind of work the same. So the intracardiac defibrillator, the wires will go into the heart and down into the right ventricle. And what that does is, if you have a tachycardic event, which is your heart beating really, 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 really fast and stops, this will just shock the heart, give it a small shock. You generally won't feel it, and it will make sure the electrical impulses as a nice signal again, a nice beat to the heart, a nice rhythm, and it keeps you alive. The issue with what we're having is that only 40% of patients with this intracardiac defibrillator fitted show activation. So this means that 60% of people who have had surgery to have this fitted, they show no activation. So it's not working for them, or they don't need it. Now, this costs up to £10,000 per person per implantation. So my project was to try and find a biomarker, a blood-based biomarker, to stratify patients at risk. So in the blood, we have the buffy coat, we have the plasma, and we have the red blood cells. So when you spin that down, you'll be able to see the difference. The red blood cells is where all your red blood cells are, and your platelets are. You have I've said that wrong, but it's right. But the buffy coat, which is where your white blood cells are, and then you have the plasmas, which I want is where all your proteins are based. That's what I analyze, and I'll look at the proteins in that to see whether a person is at risk of a disease. Now, you're probably all aware of having a blood test, having your vitamin D or iron levels checked. This is exactly the same. This is how they will look for it. So what I do is I take that plasma, I will then chop those proteins up by digestion into small peptides. I will then reconstitute this in some kind of solution, and then I will put that on the mass spec to be analysed. And what happens here is they will tell me how much of a certain protein is in that patient sample. But you have 2 phases. You have the discovery phase, and then you have the targeted phase. In the discovery phase, I ask that mass spectrometer to tell me everything that is in that plasma sample. I want to know what all the proteins are in that sample, and it will generate a list for me of up to 2,000 biomarkers or proteins. From that, I will then take that list, I will then measure a control plasma, so non-diseased, against my diseased patients. That will then tell me what patient has higher levels, say, of vitamin D if you want, or iron, or lower levels. But I already know what levels are supposed to be in the blood, so I can definitely tell if it's upregulated or downregulated. So then it comes to the targeted stage, where then I will target that protein or that biomarker for quantitation, so that it can tell me exactly the amount of what is in that patient plasma. And this is our beautiful machine. This is the machine that I work on. This is the triple quad. You have two stages. So the first part of it is the liquid chromatography part. And what that does, it separates all those ions out on their master charge. So you'll have the peptide that is selected out for separation on their size, first, and then they'll be ionized, so you'll have a positive electrospray ionization. What that means is just gives it a bit of a charge so it can go on to the next stage. All the neutral charged ions will be eliminated. These will then be fragmented on to the detector, where this will bounce off the detector and be read off to say, this belongs to this protein, this molecule belongs to this protein, and then we can quantitate that to see how much is in there. So now on to the postdoc. So I started the postdoc May last year, and it is on aortic stenosis. But our aortic stenosis is basically you have 4 valves of the heart, and the stenosis part means that it's calcified or it's fibrotic, so their leaflets can't open properly. And here you can see you have 3 leaflets of the valve, and they should open and close, because they want the blood to go through. But they need to close because we don't want the blood to go backwards. It's a one-way system. So you want the oxygenated blood to go all the way through the system, all the way through your body, into your heart, all the way around your valves, and then we want it to go to the pulmonary valve to pick up oxygen, and then back into the heart, straight through the valves to the aortic valve, and into the body through the aorta. And this is where your body collects all the oxygen for its cells to use. But if these valves are calcified and rigid, they become stiff. Now, this can cause strokes, and it can cause sudden cardiac arrest. So we need to be able to fix that. So I'm looking at proteins to see if there are biomarkers in there that we can test for aortic stenosis, like high levels of calcium or anything. Some patients are actually presenting at clinic with really severe aortic stenosis, but they've not had any symptoms. And the normal age is around about 65 years old. So some patients, especially women, are presenting later in life, around 70 years old, but yet have had this wear and tear, if you like, and calcification occurring, but have had no symptoms whatsoever. I want to know why that is, why some patients are having issues with symptoms and being presented at hospital more than others, especially women. So I will look at their ECGs, measure their heart rate. I also do the cardiac MRI imaging to see this gives us a clear image to look at the valve to see how it's opening and closing and the speed that it does there. And then with the biomarkers, with the blood, I will then analyze that to detect any sort of proteins, whether they're high regulated or down regulated within these samples. So the treatment for a person with aortic valve disease is transcatheter aortic valve replacement. What this is a mechanical valve being inserted through the femoral artery into the left ventricle, sorry, yep. And then what that does, you'll have a balloon that you pump, and it will push open, and attached to that balloon will be a mechanical or pigskin valve. So this will press it open. Now, this is really good, but there are risks to this. Because you are pushing that valve open and it's got calcification towards it, it can leak those little calcified plaques into the blood. This can cause strokes. So there was always risk to surgery. Also, you are awake when this happens, and it makes me feel uncomfortable every time I say that, because just being awake for something like that is but there's no pain. You are under local anesthetic. But yeah, so there's a few risks, especially with infection as well. And not only that, if you're on palliative care, there are more risks of death. So what they do if you are on palliative care, instead of putting in the valve replacement, they'll just put the balloon in to spring open that valve to let the oxygenated blood be able to flow through. I can't say that, apologies. So in the lab, we normally do everything by hand, but in our lab, we have two amazing robots. On your left-hand side, we have Andrew, and on the other side, we have the Bravo. So because I have a disability, these help me with preparing my patient samples. And also, they're great for, you can have deviations within sample prep, human error, things like that. So these are great for preventing that. And instead of doing one sample at a time, the left-hand side, Andrew, can do 96 samples at once, whereas the Bravo can do 96 samples in one plate, but 9 plates at a time. So for my postdoc, I have 700 patient samples from around the world, and I know that there's going to be really less batch variation in when I process them. I know they're all going to be exactly the same amount of plasma in there, exactly the same amount of solvent in there, no human error, which makes the research a lot more specific and sensitive. This is the lab that I work in. I just wanted to give you like a look-see of what a clinical research laboratories look like. They're not nice like you have at the university if you're a student and or any of you have been students in the labs. They're quite tidy. Ours are pretty messy. We do try to keep them tidy as possible, but it is difficult. We have separate labs, one for the mass spec room. That room has to be quite cold, so you have to wrap it warm. And then you have the wet labs where we do our sample preparation. Now I want to talk a little bit about the gaps in research and where I would like to take my research eventually. So, women in clinical trials. Now, it's only been since 1993 that women have really been included in clinical trials. So that's just over 30 years. And I think that's really bad, and it really needs to change. And this is what we're trying to do to change, because all medication has been tested on white men from the age of 18 to 60, normally about, which is great, but we need more women and more women of different minorities as well, because what we've been finding is actually, especially when it comes to heart medication, women metabolize things differently. And so I'm not going to say much more because I've got another slide for that. So why it matters. So there's different bits of heart disease, how it affects us. So as I told you earlier, a heart attack affects women and men completely differently. So there are a lot of British Heart Foundation studies now into this, which I'm really, really happy about, and they need to know why. And they also want to know whether the biomarkers are different for men and women as well. So we have one called the C-reactive protein that we look at, or creatinine. So we can look at these to see if normally if they're upregulated, we can say like someone's having a heart attack, we know, but are they different in men and women? So we need to find these out. Women experience different symptoms for heart failure as well. They definitely get a lot more lymphedema, more swelling of the legs and the body, lower extremities. So there is a lot of research. As you can see, it's a very, very busy slide, but this is why it matters so much to us. So this slide just shows you the adverse reactions to different medications between men and women. And so here on the left hand side, you can see all the reactions that the men and women are having, but the blue is the men and the pink is the women. And as you can see, there are more women having more adverse reactions and different signs and symptoms to medications. So we need to have a dosing strategy and to find out why. So last week I put in a proposal, my first grant proposal for a project. So this is where I'd like my research to eventually go into. I would like to look at the different hormone interactions with medication that are used in cardiovascular disease, because like I said, what we're finding is there's certain enzymes in a female in the liver that breaks down these medications that are either too slow or too fast. So we know that men and women both have different hormone levels with the estrogen and testosterone. And we also know that at different times of the month, the women's estrogen levels are different. And we also know you have premenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and as a child growing up as well. So these different hormone levels, which fluctuate through life and as well as through the month, they need to be investigated a little bit more. And so my project aims to do that. So what I'll be looking at is 3 medications, only 2 here, but there's a couple of medications that I'm going to be looking at that I've put on my grant. And there are the specific metabolites, which are called the CYP enzymes, or the cytochrome P45 group of enzymes. And what these enzymes do, they're all in your liver, male and female, they're all there, and they break down medication. Now, when it comes to the men, they generally break them down on the same sort of level, the same sort of speed. So they don't really change too much. But when it comes to women, the higher the estrogen level, the faster the clearance. So what this means is it's breaking down the medications quite fast. But if you need to retain some of that medication and it needs to be taken up, from your liver, broken down and into the cells of your body. So if you've got, heart failure or you've got migraines, if it's been broken down too fast, it's clearing too fast, which means your body's getting rid of it. So it's being excreted by, the urine and by your kidneys too quickly. So you're not getting that medication that you need. So therefore you can have an adverse reaction, or you're not getting any pain meds. You're still having that pain. Whereas if the estrogen level is down-regulated, it's gone low, you're having a slower clearance. So them liver enzymes are taking longer to break down that medication. Now, if the longer these medications stay in your liver, what does your liver do? It clears toxins out. So that toxin is going to stay in your liver, and then this can cause adverse reactions and even high toxicity and even death. So this is why we're seeing in the clinic a lot of people having, especially women, having different adverse reactions to the medication, and more women are being presented at hospital because of adverse reactions than men. So we need to have a dosing strategy for this. Sorry, I'll go back to that. Yeah. So my plan is at the end of this is to work with the clinicians, the hospitals, and do a clinical trial on this. And then hopefully have that dosing strategy. So every time you go and see your general practitioner or your consultant, if you're under the consultant, they can say to you, okay, this is the medication I'm going to put you on. Now you have autonomy and you have control of your own medication if you want, or we can get somebody to help you with your medication dosage. If you are on HRT, we can tell you to take this amount of medication at this amount of time. If you're premenopause, we can tell you to monitor your flow, if you like, and to see your estrogen levels, and we can give you the tools to do that. And it sounds like it can be a bit of a fuss, but to make sure that you get the best out of your medication and the safety is paramount, we will, and hopefully an AI in the future will help us get it even better. So I'm not just a scientist. I'll put this slide up. There's a lot that I do for the university now, and I like to get involved in. I like to help people where I can because of all the trials and tribulations that I've had. So I joined the iReach team at the University of Leicester. So the iReach team is a Wellcome Trust funded project. They funded 22 universities across the UK. They gave them a couple of £1 million each to do some research to see and to test and to hope to embed new, better tools for research. So what we're finding is that, especially with Leicester, we'll take Leicester, we have a 50%, 51% global majority population, if you like. So the whites are the minority. And then at the university, we have a high population of global majority students as well. But as you get to professor, it goes down to 3%. And then if you're a woman, it goes down even lower. And if you have disabilities, it's in lower. So it's like looking at the disadvantages to see why is there a difference between the disability? Is there a difference, between the ethnicities? Why have all these barriers there? Now, we know a lot of these barriers are there because of the way the system's been going for the past 100 years, and that's fine. But now we want to make sure that the university breaks down these barriers for everyone. We want everyone to have a fair go, whether you are disabled, disabilities like myself, or have autism like myself, or I have ADHD. So we want to make sure that everyone will be able to go onto that path of making it to professor one day, if that's what they want, and have the help and support there. So this project finishes next year in 2026. And I've also put in a mini grant application for this to help people with disabilities and help the people with non-disabilities to be able to see and visualize what it's like to have a disability. So we'll be taking pictures and drawing pictures of saying what it's like to be in a wheelchair. Whereas, you know, if someone's in a wheelchair and they're trying to look at an event or go to a museum, they take pictures and all they see is the back of people and the back of people's bums. You know, that's how can we change that? Or if they go into the laboratory, the people can't get onto the lab benches. So there's all these barriers in place, so we're trying to change that. So these are some of the people that I've been working with as well through my time here. So I did volunteer for 4 years during my degree at the hospital. They had over 700 volunteers when I was there. Absolutely loved it. I was a ward support. I loved giving back to the patients. I was on the female elders ward. I call it the female elders ward because they called it the geriatric ward, and I just thought that was derogatory. I was like, these are my elders. I learned from them. They're wise. They're beautiful. So that's what I call them. And they told me some amazing life stories. I could help with their feeding. I could help with their dementia care, anything they needed. So if anyone wants any sort of life skills, I would definitely go and volunteer. And if you've retired and you want something to do, definitely volunteer. I'm also part of the Centre for Ethnic Health Research, where we go into communities and see what the inequalities within the healthcare system is, such as bowel cancer is, you know, affected obviously all men, but within the Black community, they don't really like to go to the doctors. That we're finding. So we're going into the communities and asking why. And it's, you know, I'm a British person, so it's the British, oh, yeah, we got this, we're strong, and yeah, don't need to go that. It's very similar to that, or they just don't want to be touched. So we're trying to encourage them to go for testing and just make sure that they feel safe and it's okay for them. It's okay for men to go forward and go to the doctors. We need to encourage more men to go to the doctors, definitely. So yeah, that's a few of that. Also, I helped set up a women's health research network. Did a couple of events this year. It was brilliant, again, because I wanted to go into this, because I want to give back, because I know there are differences between our health, and especially with women's health. Things like endometriosis is now being classed as an autoimmune disease now instead of a gynecological disease. There's more research being put into that and more funding being put into that. Pain as well. So women are a lot of the chances are always fobbed off when it comes to pain. So again, we're putting more research into why women being fobbed off with pain. Why do we have to put up with this? So there was a couple of events for that. And one of the events was at the Tigers ground. This was with all the professors there. I managed to squeeze in because I think they need voices from all parts of the university about this. So what we're doing here is getting not just the University of Leicester, but it's going to be in Midlands, West Midlands, East Midlands. So we're going to have Warwick, Birmingham, Nottingham, all of them coming together to work together to build up a network of researchers into women's health. And we have got five main themes now that have coming out of that. So I'm just writing a systematic review for that as well. So watch this space on that. That'll be good. I also did the Pint of Science Talks 2025. And even if you're an alumni, I'm sure you can get involved with this. But this is where the whole of the world, this is a global event, go to a pub and they give a talk about their research and in front of people with, you know, they don't have any scientific background, but this can be astronomy, it can be biology, chemistry, all STEM. And we're going to a pub where it's all nice and relaxed. I definitely had a couple of ciders before I started, but you get to really interact with people. There was someone sat in the audience that had an intracardiac defibrillator fitted and it saved his life. So we had a lovely conversation after. But yeah, this is actually a global event and for 3 nights. So if anybody's interested in participating or going, I've put the link on there as well for anyone to take part. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Hello, everybody. Just double checking we can see me and hear me okay. Can I get a couple thumbs up? Yeah. Beautiful, amazing. Thank you. I wanted to start by saying thank you so much, Gez, for that amazing presentation. Really enjoyed it, kind of getting to know a little bit of your research, getting to know your background, what led you up to this moment. We've had a few questions come through, some before the presentation and some during your presentation. So if you're okay with me reading them out to you, and then we can
Absolutely,
go
of
through.
course. I'll try. Yeah.
Amazing. We will try to get through as many questions as possible. If anyone does have any more questions, do put them on the chat and I will read them out to Gez. So let's have a look. So what inspired you to choose University of Leicester for your PhD?
Well, the research, the goal for research. I know how difficult it was to get into the University of Leicester because I tried for my undergrad. So I thought getting a PhD from Leicester is quite prestigious, but I do have to also stay within the East Midlands because I am obviously a single parent and I don't have family because I was obviously in the care system. But I actually tried my the PhD application. It was the first PhD application I ever did, and I got an interview, and I was just like, I didn't realize I was going to get it. So then I got really inspired more because I didn't think like somebody like me would be sitting where I am today. So it was just, oh, this PhD looks really, really good. Oh, it's University of Leicester. I really want to get in there, but I don't think I am. Let's apply for it. And oh, I got it. So yeah, it was just, I was pushed into, there was something calling me and I just didn't think I was going to get there, but I did, and something pushed me.
It was meant to be then, and we're
I
very
think
happy you
so. The
decided to
Lord
join
loves
us.
me, yeah.
Amazing. We did have a few questions from the audience. So, hi, Dr. Gez. Please, does your research highlight indices around people with invisible heart conditions, example, cardiomyopathy?
Opposite.
Sorry if I'm mispronouncing
No,
the
that's
words,
right.
and
Yeah.
its impact on the lives of people with such disability.
Okay, so my PhD was on different types of cardiomyopathies. So you've got multiple types of cardiomyopathies. What that means is you've got hypertrophic, dilated. So this can be to do with the walls of the lining of the heart, so the myocardial. So it can cause thickness and rigidness. So it stops it makes the ventricles of the heart not pump out the blood because it's the atria of the heart, the top two parts, if you like. They actually push the blood through the valves, and then they fill up with blood, and then the longer ventricles, they push the blood back through. So with cardiomyopathy, this affects the lining of that lower myocardium, so it becomes really thick. So if it becomes thick, you've got less space for the blood to fill up in there. So there is a lot of research going into this at the minute because you've also got diabetic cardiomyopathy, Takeuchi cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome. So if someone's got a broken heart, it affects more women than men. So if you lose a loved one and they die, especially in the elder generation, you could die of a broken heart. It is actually a thing, but it's a form of cardiomyopathy. So what we're trying to do now is to see if there are actually biomarkers that we can see early on,
so we can anticipate it.
Yeah, because a lot of the time it's normally you're presented and you've been told you've got it, and also lots of medications want to look at that actually slow the process of that and actually can open up those ventricles a bit more.
Okay, that sounds amazing. I had no idea, so it's quite insightful. You did mention during your presentation that you wanted more women and minorities to take part in the clinical trials. How could they do this? How could these minorities and these women participate in said trials?
So there are lots of websites, and especially at the moment, because the NHS 10-year plan is on, part of that is for women to get involved. So we want more patient participant engagement, so more PPIE and more people to join clinical trials. So the websites are, you've got Research UK, which is Research UK is one word, then .co.uk. I can give you these and you can put them, send them out.
Yeah, we can try and put them in the chat.
Okay, yeah, then you got we need you trials.com. That is, I love that. We need you, we really, really do. And then nhs.uk. they've got their website for clinical trials as well. There's also the NIHR website, so the National Institute for Health Research. So what happens is you'll put all your information, you'll tell them who you are, what you look like, etc., and that kind of personal information, and what sort of clinical trials that you're interested in taking part in, and they can advise you from there. That's where I'll be going to put out what eventually, if I get this grant, for participants,
Fingers
women, please
crossed.
take part. Yeah. So it'll be mainly like the NHS. I probably will be putting mine out somehow on the university website as well, because I think that they do a clinical part on their SharePoint. If you're alumni, you might not be able to get
yes.
that. Yeah.
I believe they should be able to, but I'm
Yeah.
sure with all the platforms that is going to be on, everybody will be able to have a look and participate. So fingers crossed it'll all go well. Amazing. A few more questions from our audience today as well. Have you spoken with other people who are care leavers in your role as a speaker? And if so, did they have similar experiences of sadly being kind of let down by the system when they became adults?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if you'd finished. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
I speak to I'm on a lot of groups, actually, even on Facebook groups, care leavers. But I do go around schools. I actually got contacted the other day from a school for me to speak to a couple of their students, and I've actually invited their students to come to the lab for me to show them physically, because I think they miss out on a lot, and so I want to make them feel the same as everybody else, but still a little bit special, and I think that's okay. Do you see what I mean? Like, some people, we do need a little bit of extra support, an extra bit of love, an extra bit of holding hand. And that's not, oh, she's got this and they've got that. It's not about that. It's like some people just need that little bit extra more, and that's okay. So I want to show them a little bit of love by inviting them in so I can speak to them in person. I don't mind doing Teams or anything else, but with if they're still at school with their teachers, I am DBS checked. And then show them that actually you can do this. But the universities do have a lot of schools and colleges come to the university, and we had one session of know your job role where the students come in and they ask everyone your job role. And I had a group of girls that told me that they'd failed, they were doing their GCSEs and they'd literally failed their maths, and they were getting a 2, and they were so depressed, and they were like, my life's over, that's it. So I had to say, stop there. No, it's not. I don't have a GCSE in maths. I still don't have a GCSE in maths, and I've got a doctorate. Yeah. I said, so I did functional skills level 1 and 2, and then I actually went to sit my GCSE, and they said, no, you can go straight on to do the science course. And I said, it may take you a little bit longer. I call that the scenic route. So you're actually learning more from the journey, because you're learning about resilience and determination and what it takes. And these are vital life skills for, especially from the care system, especially if you've not got that support. Even if you're in foster care, some people don't have that support. So I really like to give talks to people where I can. And a lot of people have started to approach me now. So I'm happy to help where I can.
That's amazing. You also mentioned during your presentation how there was an increased number of children in the system, I believed. Do you know if the system has adapted or improved at all since the late 90s?
It's exactly, I would personally say it's exactly the same, if not worse, because we are overrun at the minute with, as you know, mental health crisis. So it's a mental health crisis, not just in children, but with adults as well. So if the adults are not getting that care and support that they need, because you need to be a good parent, then unfortunately they're either neglecting their children or physically harming their children. So they have to be removed. And because we do have a growing population, and we have done since 1994, it has affected this. Now, on the news the other day, the doctor was saying that there was a mental health crisis, and there's only 500 jobs for psychiatrists, but yet there's over 10,000 doctors that are coming through that need that 500 jobs. So they need to open up, but the government just won't pay. So this is why the doctors are on strike. It's not because necessarily for their pay. It's like they've recognised there's so, my daughter, she's going through CAMS herself, I don't mind saying that, but there is problems in it at the government end of not putting that funding, because they are funded through the government at the end of the day, and not putting that and opening up more CAM centres, more mental health nurses and provisions. They're closing them down. We've had one of the Brandon unit was closed down, was the Bradgate, one of the two in Leicester was closed not long ago, and the Towers. So yeah, it's really disheartening to see that it's not really changed. A lot of kids are just being pushed. There's that age group as well, which is about 14 to 16, even 17, 18. They're just pushed out and placed into homeless hostels. I was placed into a homeless hostel next to a bail hostel, which is not really good for a young girl. And they're just forgotten about. So if they can't get you into a foster care, they just put you in a hostel and leave you to it. It's
Well,
so sad.
hopefully things will change,
I'm
and having
praying.
people like yourself speaking up about your journey and everything
Yes.
you've been through, hopefully it will help improve the system.
Yeah.
Talking a little bit about your amazing robots that you have, we had a few questions on, did you have to fight to get those robots? Did you, like, for your help with your research, was it something that got handed to you? How
Oh
was
no,
that?
it's not. It's for the lab. So yeah, they're not my robots. I call them mine, but they're not mine. Actually, if it wasn't for this amazing postdoc that started a year after me and finished a year before me, amazing postdoc. She was the one that managed to get these all. She gets everything. We've just had a new £2 million mass spectrometer as well put in, and we're hopefully getting another one. So instead of just looking at proteins, we can look at metabolites as well. So these were done on a grant. She fought for them, the university, and for the NIHR, and they got grants, and we managed to get them in. And upstairs in the kidney department, they've managed to get the small little Andrew in as well. So it's just having amazing people to say, actually, we've got a larger lab.
Amazing.
Our labs are growing. We need the help. So they're not specific for me. I do get extra support because, I do
Yeah.
have multiple disabilities, so I can't feel my hands, so I do
Okay.
get extra support. But yeah, I didn't have any access to that, but thanks to Colleen, she did.
There we go. Amazing. So it seems like we have some big fan of the two lab robots, Andrew and Bravo, and they're asking if, do you know how they got their names?
Yes, I do not know. So Andrew is a synonym, but I can't remember what it stands for. But it's a handling unit. And Bravo again is another synonym for their scientific
For
name
what they do.
for what they do. But yeah, so we just call them Andrew and Bravo.
Okay, amazing. Let me see if I've got a few more questions. Going back a little bit to your journey and after everything that you've been through, what are some of the coping techniques that work best for you and your daughter?
So it's taken me a long time to get a lot of help that I needed from the government, you know. So today was my actual first day of doing my coaching strategies for neurodiversity and disability. But for as a student, I have had support through Montfort University, through the
Okay,
lecturers there. They have been absolutely amazing. And my professor, when I started my PhD, as he won Professor of the Year, Supervisor of the Year, because of me,
amazing.
I got in that. So there was a big ceremony by the Vice Chancellor and everything, because he has been that supportive from day one. So I was the odd one out of the PhD student. I was a mature student. I had a
Okay.
child. I was working. I had a bit of depression. Life, it was hard. So
Yeah.
having that support, having someone to talk to is brilliant, and he can point you in the right places. And now I've got support through access to work and from the disability team at the University of Leicester as well. And again, it's been extremely hard, but very, very helpful for the occupational health and the university. Basically, they've been a brilliant.
Well, I'm glad you're getting the support you feel like you needed and that you found techniques that work for you. And hopefully, in our audience, if anyone does need any support, it gives them some hope that things do get
Yeah.
better. So I have one more question before we close off today's session. Why did you choose to specialize your research in cardiac arrest?
I actually wanted to be paleontology all my
Okay.
life or study astrophysics, but I couldn't study
Amazing.
astrophysics because I knew my maths wasn't that is great.
Okay.
And because I was a single parent with a baby at the time when I applied for college, but think about university, the only university was Bristol. So I kind of again got pushed into this. So I went to biomedical science and I thought, oh, okay, I wanted to go into immunology actually. But then this PhD come up and it was like, oh, I like cardiovascular because I do and I liked it. And then I got into it and it kind of like got pushed down that way again. So it's just like something's pulling me this way, even though I want to go and study dinosaurs. but I prefer the heart than dine. I know. Yeah.
Not too sure on that, but we're gonna go with the heart for now. And
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe you'll become a paleontologist. There's still plenty of time.
Yeah.
You know, you could change your career at
I'm
some
getting old.
point. So I don't think I have any more questions. I'm really sorry if I missed anybody's question at any point. We did have some lovely comments from our audience following up your
Thank you,
presentation.
everyone. Thank you.
So thank you so much for everything. It was great to hear you, your inspiring journey, everything you've been up to, your research. I know we mentioned a couple websites and things during our presentation, so everything's going to be posted in the chat afterwards. So that is it from us. Thank you again, Dr. Gez, for a fantastic talk. And to our audience, thank you so much for taking part in the event, for the questions, for engaging. If you do have a spare moment, please do fill out the post-event evaluation that is going to be found in the chat that our team is going to be posting. And to stay in the loop with everything alumni related, alumni news, alumni events, please do make sure that your contact details are up to date. You can do this by clicking in the link that will also be in the chat. If you are a user of social media, you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also visit our website for future events. Like I said, all the links will be in the chat, so you'll be able to find them. But that is it. Thank you so much, everyone.
And thank you for all your lovely comments. I just saw them. So thank you very much. It means a lot to me.
There we go. I think that is it from us. So it was lovely to see you, and hopefully we will see you at another event.